Paul Saladino would be so proud of you, and he would say, fruit is not bullshit. So
Yeah. No, it's not. Fruit is not. And it's, I mean, I don't know if everybody should be eating fruit. Like if I had a serious problem with diabetes, I probably would be super, super careful or keeping it to just some berries. But luckily, I don't have a blood sugar issue at all. And I see that I am very well fat adapted, that I can have some fruit, have my blood sugar spike a normal amount, like maybe to 110 or 120 for me, and then it just comes back down to about 80 or 85 where it should be. So I can see that works for me. Also, I don't have any digestive problems or joint pain or rashes or anything like that that have popped up from the fruit. If anything, I've gotten benefit where while the longer I was doing strict carnivore and only eating animal foods, I was getting these worse and worse problems with thirst. And I've never had a problem being overly thirsty. I'm never somebody who like sips on water during an exercise class. I just drink my water and then I'm good for a few hours. But I was noticing the last couple of months, I cannot get through a workout without taking a water break multiple times. And then after dinner, I would have this insatiable thirst where I felt like I'm going to die if I don't drink like 3 or 4 glasses of water. So I heard from Paul Saladino that he was having some electrolyte problems too. And his theory is that when you are in ketosis all of the time, you really can struggle with retaining electrolytes, and you might just be eliminating them out at a pretty rapid rate. Now, I'm not an expert on that topic, but that's just what he says, and I tend to think that he's a pretty smart person. So I tried it out, having a little bit of fruit. Usually it's the last thing I eat at night, and I'm not so thirsty anymore. And it's going great. I also feel like I'm sleeping better. Like I'm more calm at bedtime and I can sleep through the night better. And I'm thrilled because in my dream life, I can eat all the food that I want. So even adding in one thing is a big deal for me.
Well, yeah. And I love that, by the way, because a lot of people get very hard-nosed when it comes to their diet. Well, I went keto and I'm getting the benefits from keto and I'm going to stay keto for life. Great. I'm glad you have that mentality, you guys. But be mindful that keto is therapeutic, meaning do it for a period of time to help you heal, and then slowly add back in things that can help continue that healing in a new way. Sometimes there's an acute healing that needs to take place, insulin resistant to insulin sensitive. And the only way you test how insulin sensitive you've become is to add back in a little bit of carbohydrate. Now, I've tried that. Doesn't work so well for Jimmy Moore. I have to stay a little more on the carnivore side most of the time, and I'm okay with that. I eat luxurious grass-fed meats and pasture meat. I'm not quite at the kidney and gizzard level yet. You're next level over Jimmy Moore right now.
Kidneys were really good, I have to say, and hearts. I don't like organs. Like I have a goat liver in the fridge I'm so afraid to eat. It's probably going to just sit there for a while. Yeah. But I was really shocked at how good the kidneys and the hearts were.
Yeah, you were talking about the kidneys had a nice texture, a little bit kind of gamey taste, but a good texture. But yeah, I love beef heart. Beef heart really isn't that different than just ground beef. And then I've had beef tongue, so you can make lengua. So there's lots of little bits that you can use from the animal. And look, if we talk about wanting to be nutrient dense and wanting to get all the nutrition from an animal, we should probably try to push ourselves to eat most of the animal.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think it's really important to try to eat all the different parts of the animal. It's also great for respecting the animal and for honoring our planet. And I know a lot of people feel guilt when they eat animal products because they think that they're, killing these animals, which you are. But they think of it in a bad light. And I don't think of it that way at all. I think of it as that these animals are actually here as a part of the circle of life. And, when we die, we're going to go into the soil and we're going to actually make soil and nutrients for the earth. And that's one of our contributions here. And for me personally, I choose to eat only meat that's from regenerative farms. And 100% grass-fed beef. I mean, I could go through all the meats. I'm not going to, but I'm very, very particular about where I buy my meat from. I buy it all directly from farmers that I know
Yes.
and that I talk to and I meet.
Right.
And then I try to buy the whole cow, and I try to get all of the organs and the different parts. This is kind of cool, I even am getting the skull of a cow that I recently purchased and the hide, like the fur, because I want to actually use these parts in my life. I don't really know what I'm going to do with a skull, but I thought, it's better than it just going in the trash.
Like a bowl?
I'm going to put it on my wall or something, or put it like in my garden. I don't know, but I just feel that I am consuming this cow. I want to actually honor and participate in this cow, including eat all of the different body parts from it.
So if you got busybody neighbors, Madeline, I've got a perfect thing for that head, for the skull. Stick it at your front door and nobody will ever come to your house.
That's a great idea. So if anybody walks up and tries to shoot me up with something, there's going to be a skull on my door.
And you need to put some like robotics or animatronics on it so it moves with motion detector. Rah!
Perfect. I'll do that. That's a great idea.
And it doesn't just have to be Halloween. It could be year-round, baby. Yeah, nobody will ever mess with your household.
Yeah.
Well, this is awesome, and I love that you're out there sharing your story and learning along the way. Look, that's how I built what I do. People are like, wow, you know so much about keto and cholesterol and fasting and now childhood trauma and some of the mindset stuff. I'm like, it's not by accident. I just studied and learned, and like you, wanted to know the mechanisms of why things work. Why am I this way? And how can I fix me? And so you did the same thing. But the fun part about it is when you fix yourself and you figure things out yourself, you can disseminate that information over social media. And now on your podcast, again, the Project Keto podcast, I mean, you're very bubbly on screen and you talk very clearly. So obviously you're wonderful for podcasting. What made you want to do a podcast?
Oh, gosh. Well, I just love teaching. I've been teaching different types of things since I was 14 years old, and I like presenting on video or audio. I've always been drawn to that. And so I just started it a number of years ago. I don't remember what year, but it's been like about 3 or 4 years since I've been doing it. And I just did it and I haven't stopped. And most of it is solo cast. It's mostly just me on there. And it's because I like to teach things sequentially. I like to teach things a little bit like a course or a lesson. Yeah. And so I have these different seasons of the podcast. Like, for example, right now we're in season 6, and it's all about going back to the basics of health. And so people listen from the first episode on, and you feel like you're taking a class or a course. And it is actually almost the same material that I do teach in some of my classes. I teach a homeschool nutrition class for teenagers. It's very similar to that class, but geared more towards adults. So I just love teaching information. And when I learn something, I want to spread it around and tell everybody about it. And so that's why I have my podcast. It's really just my own outlet for talking.
I've been doing this for 16 years and people think it's easy, and it is now. But it's a lot of behind the scenes stuff that people are like, oh, anybody could do a podcast. I'm like, all right, show me how it's done. And you're proving consistency, passion, and content is the key. And I love it. And I'm not surprised that you've been able to be out there now several years. Most people get gung-ho for about 5 or 10 episodes, Madeline, and then they're like, yeah, that's for the birds. No.
Yeah, I know.
I do 4 a week.
Yeah, it's hard. It's hard doing podcasting. Now, I don't think it's hard talking or presenting or planning what I'm going to say, but I don't know anything about websites or technology or microphones or computers, but I did actually learn all that myself, and I'm really glad. I think it's important that we always are learning new skills. And for me, the biggest learning hurdle I've had with the podcasting is the technology. And I'm really glad that I know it now. And I'm actually getting ready to have my mom start a podcast too. And I'll do the whole thing except for the talking. She'll do that. I'll put it on for her. And I'm really glad to have a new skill.
Yeah, look at you getting your Gen X mom to be a podcaster. Like, It's not as hard. It's not as bad as people think. And I'll often have people write me and go, will you help me start a podcast? And I've helped hundreds of people like start. It's like, it's not hard. You just have to kind of know, get your ducks in a row and everything and kind of know some basic things. But the technology is so great here in 2022. You should have seen in 2006 when I first started, I had the little Plantronics microphone that looked like the Britney Spears, microphone when she was on stage, and it's just so rudimentary. It's almost like the little cup and the string and and then you log on to iTunes. There was no such thing as Apple Podcasts or Spotify and Stitcher and all these places. And so, yeah, it's definitely come a long way. And I don't think anybody and everybody needs to podcast. Unfortunately, the pandemic brought a lot of people into podcasting that had no business podcasting. But I'm glad you're out there. You're definitely doing your part to get the message out. So good job. Yeah,
thank you.
Yes. So what's a topic in keto carnivore that you think doesn't get enough airplay? What can we talk about that you feel like nobody gives this credence?
Well, not many people talk about SIBO.
Yes.
In relation to keto and carnivore, or at least when I do hear a lot of people talking about it, it makes me cringe.
So let's talk about that.
They don't get it.
So let's talk about that. Let's dig at that a little bit. First of all, for people not familiar, it stands for small intestinal bacterial overgrowth, SIBO, SIBO. And so tell us what that is and where do people get it wrong?
Well, small intestinal bacterial overgrowth is exactly what it sounds like. It's bacteria that's overgrown into your small intestine. So I wish I had my little diagram of the organs here, but if you don't know what the small intestine or the large intestine look like, after this, go look it up. But you've got your small intestine first that leads into your large intestine. And bacteria from the large intestine can overgrow and back up and land backwards in the small intestine where it shouldn't be. Oh, there we go. So there's a nice diagram there. So it isn't necessarily bad bacteria. Like if someone's struggling with candida or something, that's a different thing. It's just the bacteria has overgrown into the small intestine where it's not supposed to be. And then the symptoms that people usually experience from SIBO are almost everybody says, I can't eat anything. That's like the ding, 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 you have SIBO. If you say like, I can't eat anything, and you literally can't, like you get so sick no matter what you eat. Or people will have severe belly distension, bloating. They'll have either constipation or diarrhea or altering, and severe stabbing intestinal pains, like really, really bad pains that make you double over, or you have to call in and not go to work, or you think you have to go to ER, that kind of extreme pain. And you can do testing for SIBO. I found out I had SIBO about 6 or 7 years ago, and at the time, nobody really was talking about it except for one person who was off writing a book and taking time off. So I didn't have anybody helping me except for her blog. So I treated the SIBO myself. You can do breath testing. You would typically do this through a doctor, but if you find someone you can order it through, you can do the breath test at home. And you breathe into these little tubes. There's a whole protocol, and it will measure these different gases in your breath and basically tell you if you have SIBO and what type of SIBO you have. So I had SIBO, and I did my testing, and I interpreted my lab results myself.
What's the name of the test, Madeline? What's the name of the test?
Well, it's just called a SIBO breath test. I don't remember if there's a specific one, but you could probably do any kind of SIBO breath test.
Okay.
But I actually wouldn't necessarily recommend you do that. At the time, it was helpful because I didn't know where else to turn or what else to do. But now, the treatment that I would suggest for SIBO would be something to do whether you actually have SIBO or not. It would be more based off of if you have these digestive problems. Now, the reason why I wouldn't just tell everybody go out and do a breath test is because, one, it's very expensive. It's usually a minimum of $250 or more, and you have to do it multiple times or it's a waste.
Yeah.
Two, it's really inconvenient. You have to eat a very strict, uncomfortable, limited diet for about 4 or 5 days before the test, and then you have to drink a sugary solution during the test. And then you have to continue that diet afterwards and go into a whole treatment, and it's like not comfortable or easy.